And we're back for Chapter 3. So what are we going to look at today? Well, the big thing, I'll do another brief review of what we've already covered, and then we're going to jump into two main topics for today. The first one is looking at revenue models on the web, and the second is looking at how do we develop a web presence. In other words, how can we create an image of who we are? All right, so let's jump into the review. All right, so we've already talked about Chapter 1, which was kind of the history of the internet, what it is and how does it help businesses create value. So, and we dug into both, the internet is a network of networks that is based on the protocol TCP/IP. The IP stands for Internet Protocol, and where we get the name Internet from. And we see that it helps to create value for business in multiple different ways, particularly in helping the customers, but also with helping with internal services. So in Chapter 2, we started looking at the internet architecture when we talked about what TCP/IP actually is. So hopefully you remember that, the transmission control protocol, information protocol, and it helps to send packets of data across the networks where the host is the one responsible for getting the information where it needs to go. Now, the Internet Protocol is just a series of numbers to define where you're coming from and where you're going to. And because numbers are a real pain in the butt to remember, we came up with domain names, right? So www.ecu.edu. Right? Now that's all fine and dandy to have these domain names, but then you have to relate these domain names with IP addresses and create it in such a system so that it can deal with changes fairly rapidly. But not to have it all dependent upon just a few computers, just in case those computers go down. And so there's a lot of redundancy built into this, a lot of caching built into the domain name system to allow this great deal of flexibility in dealing with changes as they occur. And then lastly, we talked a little bit about HTML and how it is the tagging system for creating the actual web pages themselves. So today what we're going to do is kind of make a little bit of a jump away from this and look at, all right, so we see how we can create value. What are some of the ways people today are actually using the internet to make money, to bring in revenue? Okay, and there's a lot of different things we can look at here. So we're looking more at the customer focused, not internal services. And then secondly, the web presence is also establishing ourselves as someone who you should come and buy things from. All right, so who here wants to make money? All right, and then hopefully all of you. What do you need to make money? Well, there's two broad categories for creating value. And in accounting, if you remember, hopefully from your accounting classes, that there are two broad categories for expenditures, right? So you have capital, and then you have an expense. Capital is a one-time purchase, and an expense is kind of an ongoing thing. Right. And you can envision revenue in the same manner, that there's going to be these one-time lump sums where you're getting money, and then you have these ongoing things. Okay. And what we find is that you have to be able to not just have a way for people to buy things from you, but present it in such a way that people will want to do it. And that's where your presence really makes a really huge impact on that. So traditionally, our revenue models, I broke this out into a little matrix. Now, if you look at the book, I found the book a little confusing in this part of the chapter. So I developed this matrix because it made it a lot easier for me to understand. That you can either sell a product or a service. Some people call it a good or a service, whatever. And then you can have a one-time purchase or an ongoing. So kind of like the capital versus expense. It's a one-time purchase versus an ongoing expense. So your one-time product purchases, which is you're probably fairly familiar with if you go to the store to buy anything. Right? You buy a product, you take it home, but you only usually have to pay for it once. We also have a lot of services that are like that. So a fee for transaction. This might be, I need a taxi ride downtown. And so you pay a taxi driver a one-time fee for the transaction, and they deliver the service of driving you there. Or you go to the doctor, right? You pay them a one-time fee to go to the doctor, you see them, and then you don't have to pay again, right? Then you can have things like ongoing products. Now, this is a little bit different, and it's really starting to develop more in recent times. But it can deal with things like subscriptions, maybe to a magazine. So you are getting a physical product, but you're also, then that's maybe not always the best example, because oftentimes, even with magazines, you're not paying an ongoing fee. You pay a one-time fee, and then you still get it. But we're starting to see things where, like let's say my Netflix, I pay an ongoing subscription, and I get movies in the mail. Okay, and there's models like this that are built around getting products for an ongoing fee. You could also think of it in terms of a lease. And this is something I'm doing with my car right now, right? I got a product, but it's an ongoing expense. Every single month I have to pay into it to be able to use this product. And then, obviously, there's the ongoing service. So these are the things that you pay a monthly fee for, and you get the service on an ongoing basis, right? Hopefully this breakdown is something you're used to, right? So the big questions to ask: what value are you offering? Okay, so a product or a service. Who are your customers? And unfortunately, this is not asked often enough. And in fact, if you go and take a marketing class or you get a marketing degree, they really focus a lot on defining who is your customer. It is very important for not just what you're going to offer, but how you offer it. Then you have to ask, how do your customers know what you offer? And that's where the whole marketing process gets into high gear. And how do you conduct the transaction? Okay, and we're not going to cover all these today. Really, we're going to focus on how do customers know what you have to offer when you get into internet marketing. But when we're talking about revenue models on the web, okay, they still fit in the same matrix. All right, so a one-time product, you can think of it as like a web catalog, or you're purchasing a movie or music or software purchase. I go out to iTunes and I buy a song for $1.25 or whatever it is. Okay, I download it to my computer. I bought a product. I spend money one time, and then I'm done. Okay. You can also have one-time services. So like ticket sales through Ticketmaster. You could buy web advertising. Now this one's a little bit trickier, web advertising, because it almost would seem like it's an ongoing thing. And once you put up an ad, don't people keep coming back to it over and over again? Well, the way most ads, and that's not all of them, but most ads work, is they only pay you every time somebody clicks on one of the links. And so it's not an ongoing service that they're paying you. It is a one-time every time someone clicks. Now, you may get lots and lots and lots and lots of clicks on ads. Let's say you get 1,000 people to click on an ad every single week. You're going to end up with a fairly significant revenue stream from that. Okay, certainly not insignificant. It may seem like it's an ongoing thing, but in reality, what you have is a bunch of really small one-time services. But then they aggregate together and they write you a check and send it to you. Various professional services and intermediary are all offering these types of things. Okay. Now, an ongoing product. And now this one is a little bit harder to define in terms of the web, because you might realistically describe this as a service versus a product. And so I'm not saying this is the one and only way of doing this classification. But when I watch a movie, I consider that as the end product, the movie itself. But you could also see it as entertainment. Okay, so I have Netflix. at my house, streaming audio and video through Netflix. And I can watch tons and tons and tons of TV shows and a lot of older movies on their streaming video service. Are those movies products or are they services? Well, yeah, there's a legitimate argument there that's neither. That it's both. Okay, whatever. You kind of get the point is what I'm trying to hopefully get at. And then you get into things like premium services and online news services that you pay a monthly fee. I think the New York Times, I know the Wall Street Journal does. The Wall Street Journal, you can buy an ongoing service to their news, and they keep updating their news on a regular basis on their website, but you have to subscribe to it. Then you have things like software as a service. That's what SaaS stands for, SaaS, which is essentially a piece of software that you rent, and you can use it for as long as you keep paying the ongoing service. And then the VPMI, the one I linked to on here, that used to actually be a company I worked for. I won't say I necessarily recommend the product anymore. I think there's probably better ones out there that can do the job. But be that as it may, you get it's a service that you pay for on an ongoing basis. Okay. So what I want you to do, though, on your own time, and we'll talk more about this in the class discussion, is look at each of these companies and try to figure out what are the revenue models that they're using. And so, for example, if I say eBay, what revenue model is eBay using? Okay, which one of the quadrants would it fit into? You could look at it and say, well, eBay is actually not selling any products, are they? They're not selling the products. What are they doing? They're hosting auctions. So they're providing a service. There's buyers and sellers who are using eBay's service. Okay? So how does eBay make money on each one of those auctions? Is it a one-time or is it ongoing? Well, usually you pay a fee for each auction that completes. And so what happens here is eBay is actually using a one-time service, but they're doing it on a massive scale, so they make tons of money off of it. So go through the rest of these. There's through Hulu, Zynga, which is kind of the creators of Farmville and Cityville. Try to figure out what are they doing to make money? Where's their revenue coming from? Some of you may have heard of World of Warcraft. Amazon, which is kind of a special place in my heart because they do more than one. See if you can figure out which ones. New York Times, and so on. All right, so web advertising, I want to talk just a little bit more because it has become such a huge part of the web. And this has really become clear through Google's efforts, who still, to this day, 95% of Google's revenues comes from advertising, and they are a multi-billion-dollar company. They rival the size of, well, not quite yet to the size of Microsoft, but my God, they got some resources. And they're making almost all of their money through advertising. Okay? And most of that is through their search engine that they provide, right? Now, in the advertising revenue model, who is the primary customer? Now, I ask this because I think there's sometimes some confusion about this. Who is paying Google? Your customer is a person that's paying you money, right? So who is paying Google all this money? Is it you, the user, who's using their search engine? No, I've never done it. I haven't paid Google a dime. So who's doing it? It's the people who are selling the advertising. That's Google's primary customer. Okay? And that's who they're really trying to tap into. Now, that being said, in order to sell the advertising, you need to have a secondary customer who is the user using the search engines. All right. With that being said, how do you make money with within the web advertising model? Well, there's multiple different ways that traditional advertising, let's start there. Traditional advertising, like in a magazine or a newspaper or on TV or radio, you would basically pay those institutions a fixed amount of money to run their ad. Maybe they will put it on TV 10 times at these time slots, and you'll pay them a fixed amount of money for that. Now, during those 10 times, there's an expectation on average to reach this many customers. Okay. Online, there's a different model, and it's based upon the concept of click-through. Now, sometimes, and this does happen occasionally, although Google really doesn't specialize in this, sometimes they'll give you revenue off of what's called an impression. Basically, somebody sees your ad. Okay, that's what an impression is called. Anytime there's anybody viewing it. But people found that just wasn't good enough, because on the web, and I know I'm one of them, people don't usually, they tend to ignore ads. They tend to not even see them. They focus their energies on the important content. And so what's going on is that in order to for the primary customer, the business is putting the ads up, they want a little bit more careful analysis onto how effective these are. And the best way to test that is by who actually clicks on the ad that takes them, the user, to the business's actual website. Okay, and so that's what's called a click-through. All right. Sorry, before I jump on. So how do you make money with a web advertising model? Well, you have to start thinking about so if I'm a small business, okay, and I want to make money putting ads on my website, what do I need to do? First, I need to make a website that people want to come to. Second, I need to put ads in a place that these people are going to see, but without being overly obnoxious that they get annoyed and leave. You also want to make sure the ads are relevant to what I'm talking about on my web page. And so there's a lot actually that can go into really doing good web advertising. And I could probably spend, an entire semester just talking about this. And I haven't looked at the marketing departments to see if they offer a class that focuses on this, but they really should, because it really is amazing how you can make money with advertising, but there's so many things to keep in mind if you're going to do that. All right, so you also have the capability of not just using a single revenue model, but you can use multiple models. Why make money just one way when you can make it, 3 ways? So, for example, you could do both advertising and subscription. You have to be a little bit careful with that, because some people, once they subscribe, expect less advertising or no advertising because they find it very annoying. Or what some people will do is they'll provide a free version which has advertising, but if you want the premium version, there's no advertising, but you pay a subscription. So you can choose which way you do it. And then you have, you can have a subscription to products and services, like Amazon Prime does. So in Amazon Prime, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but essentially you can get free 2-day shipping if you subscribe to them. And I forget the actual amounts, like $80 a year or something like that. But you also get access to all of their online videos for free. So these are products that you can now access and use. Okay, that's besides what Amazon already does, which is they sell products. So they're doing the product one-time thing. They're doing the product ongoing through the subscription. They're doing a service ongoing. And not even getting into all the other things that they're doing. Okay, and Amazon's actually doing really good at finding ways of multiple revenue streams for their business, above and beyond what you're seeing. All right, so suppose you're creating a business, you want to make money online. and you set something up, you get going, and the money just isn't coming in. What do? Well, keep trying, okay? And what's important here is not to realize, don't get stuck on one revenue model. Don't get stuck in one frame of mind, but to learn how to adapt, okay? You can transition to different models. And you consider a lack of income as a sign that something's not right. And it may not be necessarily the revenue model you're using. It might be your marketing. It might be any number of different things that are preventing your business from getting to where it needs to be. But don't be afraid to review your revenue models and see if that's one of the things that needs changing. Okay. All right. So that's the basics of revenue models. Let's move on to looking at the web presence. Okay. So we got an idea of how we can make money. Now let's see what we can do to capture people's attention. So what is a web presence and why should you care? So a web presence is, you can think of as the actual relationship between an organization's business processes and the web. So from an executive standpoint, it's the organization's implementation of their web strategy. So the actual physical what has been done. From a customer standpoint, it is one's ability to interact with an organization over the web in whatever different way they interact with it. Okay? So why should you care about a web presence? On the web, this is often the customer's first and maybe last opportunity to interact with your company. So let's think about how you interact with, even with your local businesses. You know, I'm relatively new to the Greenville area. Okay, I've only been here a little over a year now. There is a lot of things I don't know about Greenville. So what's one of the first things I always do? I jump online, I check out a website to see what I can learn. This is my first interaction with lots of businesses, with lots of organizations. And you have to realize that this is very, very important. Now, I've been to some really good websites, and I've been to some that really lack a lot of quality to them that they could really improve significantly. If I don't see what I want right away, guess what I'm going to do? I'm out of there. I'm going on to the next place, okay? I want to find what I need as quickly as possible. So you got to consider that this is very, very true on the web. This happens all the time. A website is oftentimes today the first point of reference people have for your business. And if you don't do a good job with it, it's probably going to be the last. Don't be that company, right? Or that organization. You want to make a positive impression right away. Get people what they want right away. So let's talk a little bit more about web presence. There are 4 major issues, okay? Number 1 is you have to have good design and usability of a website. And so I'm talking about what it looks like, okay? But it's not just about what it looks like. Probably even more important is the actual content itself. So, when I talk about design, I'm not really getting into prettiness issues, all right? Think about Google's search engine. You go to www.google.com and look at their webpage. It is very, very plain, right? Their design has a lot of white space and usually has, one text box for you to type in your search terms, the title, Google, and then a couple other links underneath. And that is it. Yet how usable is that? It is extremely usable and allows people to focus on just the search, which is what they want. Okay? And then Google provides great content through incredibly relevant search results. So their content is very, very well done. And you need a communication. You need to be able to communicate with your customers or with your users in a very streamlined way. And the fourth thing is kind of to tie these together, is the whole idea is to show that you are trustworthy. Okay, and you do that by showing you're competent, you're capable, and you have good moral character. Right? Now, we're going to dig into some of these a little bit more. Trust kind of summates all of these, and since we've already talked about trust a little, and we're going to get into trust more later in the semester, I'm not going to spend much time today talking about that. The other three we are. All right? So let's start with design and usability. Okay. What makes for a good website design? So stop and think about this. When you go to different websites, what is it that you like? What is it you don't like? What are the things that when you go to these sites, you're like, yeah, well, yeah, sweet, that's exactly what I need, right? Now, why do you think many websites have very similar designs? So there is several different themes when it comes to designs and what websites look like, but you see them repeated over and over and over and over again. You know, and similar terms being used, like home, contact us, blog, or any types of specific names being used are repeated on many, many different websites. Why do they do that? Well, here's a very easy answer to that one, which is because it makes it easy for you to find what you're looking for. It makes it easy for the users to find what they're looking for. Coming up with really unique names might sound cool, but in reality, what you want to do is help people find what they're looking for. Okay? So think about all the different things that frustrate you the most on other websites. Okay, well, these might be pop-up ads, or they might just be flashy banner ads, or maybe you can't find the information you're looking for. It's buried somewhere deep, and every time you try to find it, you have to click like on 20 different links just to get to it. Think about all those different things about websites that frustrate you. Okay, the idea is to develop a website that won't do that for your users. And what we find is that humans do navigate websites in very similar ways. We do have some very predictable patterns. And so if we can tap into those patterns and understand how people naturally navigate, we can create a very usable website, something that people will find what they want as quickly as possible. Now, if you get on the web and you type in design best practices for websites or something to that effect, you're going to get tons and tons of examples out there. And so here's just 4 links that I found. So click on them, read through them. You can even pause this for a second, this lecture, and take a look and see what is similar about these. Okay? So here's my take on that. So I went through all these. The 2 big things that I took away from it is, number 1, probably the most important, make it as easy as possible for your users to find the content they want to find. Not what you want them to find, but what they want to find. Now, that being said, occasionally you can drive traffic to certain types of things by making them very prominent on your website. But if you do this too much, you're going to find that the users don't want to come back because they're usually looking for things. They're doing searches. They're trying to find certain things on your website. Okay, maybe it's a article that was written, or maybe it's a product that you're selling. Whatever it might be, you want to make it as easy as possible for people to find what they want. Because here's what's going to happen. If they can't find it within about 3 clicks, they're moving on. Now, for example, and I was amazed by this, when I started looking at universities, and this was back in 2003-ish, and so hopefully most of the universities have taken care of this by now. But one thing, I was looking at universities in which to attend. Excuse me. I need a drink. I was amazed at the number of universities that did not have a clear link to the list of their programs, of the majors, okay? I was looking for a specific major. I knew what I wanted. And I went to a lot of different university websites and I went to their homepage, and I was expecting to see on their homepage a list of their majors or their academics. You would be surprised. And this is 2003. Yes, it was a few years ago, but most of them had had websites for well over 5 years by that point, most of them 10 years. The number that did not have a clear list, okay? That is absolutely inexcusable. Okay. Now, I'm not saying they didn't have it on their website somewhere, but they didn't have it on their homepage. And so for users like me who knew what content I wanted, I couldn't find it. And that is wrong, 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 wrong. And so that is really something you have to try to focus on when you're developing your website, is realize this content, I wanted to make it easy as possible for people to get to the content they want. Right? Once you've accomplished that, then, and only then, should you worry about making it look pretty. So adding design, adding nice color schemes and nice logos and all that other stuff. Okay. First, make the content accessible, then make it look good or pleasing to the eye. How to do that? Well, some big things: design sites around how visitors navigate the links. Now, there's some really good programs out there that allow you to basically track each individual user who comes to your site and what pattern of pages they click on as they go through that site. And that's very, very convenient to see if there are common themes to their site navigation. And then what you can do is help make that process more efficient. Whether you're using drop-down menus or you're putting content that people are trying to get to, link it directly from the home page rather than requiring them to take 4 links to get to it. So there's only 1 click instead of 4. You can discover what it is that people are really interested in on your website. Or if people suddenly come in from go directly to a page instead of to one of your subpages rather than the home page, you can see where they go from there. And then that can tell you, again, more about how to create a menu system that works for them, how to create side links, or what is it that interests people, especially if they're starting from a certain place. All right, second, avoid using inflated marketing statements. Like, this is the best, hugest, most awesome thing ever. Oh my God, the number of times I've heard that. Every time I do now, I immediately leave because it annoys the hell out of me. And a lot of people are like that. They realize that it's just a bunch of marketing hype, and it becomes almost offensive. Let me be the judge of just how freaking awesome it is. Don't tell me it's awesome. Show it to me, right? And that's what I want to see. And a lot of people are like that now today too. So yes, you need to have good marketing statements, but don't overinflate what you're doing. Okay. And along with that, avoid business jargon. And this is like using acronyms or specific key terms that are known to only a select segment of your users. Avoid them like the plague. And there's tons of this. So let me think of a good example. So the company I used to work for was on the product of the VPMI, and I showed that to you earlier in these slides. On their homepage, it's difficult to discover immediately what it is that they're selling. Okay, they have a lot of business jargon thrown in there, but they never say that we're selling a piece of project management software. Very simple, very clear. That is what they need to do. And they're not. And they have things like VPMI, the blah, 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 awesome piece of software to help you control your business. Right? that you avoid it, okay? Avoid unnecessary business jargon. That's not saying don't use any business terms, but don't overdo it, okay? You also want to, lastly, make your site search engine friendly. And we're going to spend a lot of time looking at SEO, which is search engine optimization. We're going to look at more of that later. Because search engine optimization is so incredibly huge to getting people to your site. So, and here's a stat, and I don't remember the exact percentages, but I can give you a rough estimate. If you type in, and in Google it can actually provide you with these results. If you type in a search key terms, okay, keywords into search, and look at the first page of links, 50% of people will click on that first link that's provided by the search engine. And then I believe it's something like 20% will click on the second link, and then another 15% or 10% will click on the third link. And then all the other links. Less than 1% of people even go to the second page. What does that mean for your business? Well, guess what? Search engines, free marketing. If you can get your website ranked on that first page, and more importantly, to the very top link for the most important keywords, guess what? You've got a lot of free marketing coming your way. That is very, very powerful for your business, okay? And you can design a site around that, and that's going to help users find the content they want if you have good keywords that match what it is on your site, okay? Again, make it as easy as possible for users to find the content they want and make it pretty. All right, so a little bit more about usability, and this actually we'll get in we'll talk later when we get into the content, why it's important. Is they've done some studies where they actually tracked people's eyeballs and where they focus on a computer screen. And so they brought up a bunch of different websites, and then they see where are they focusing, where are they spending the most time looking on a page. And now if you look down at these website examples on this picture here, you can see what's developing here. And they call this the F pattern. And you can kind of see the letter F kind of showing up in red. That's where the people are focusing most. What does this mean for you? Well, what this is, and this should be fairly obvious, is that people read left to right, top to bottom, right? So when you're creating content, keep that in mind. People are going to read from left to right, top to bottom. Also keep in mind that, and this becomes very clear if you look at the image over here on the left-hand side, nobody's reading this stuff down there, or very few people are actually reading the content at the bottom of this page. In fact, they'll read the first paragraph and really only the first sentence or two, and then they skip down here and they see a few key terms at the very first part of this bullet point. And then they move on. They sometimes will make it all the way over to the far end of the bullet point and actually read the entire sentence. What does this mean people are doing? It means that users in general are not reading all of your text. Don't expect them to. They won't. That is not what they're trying to do. What they're trying to do is do a skim. They're trying to find the content that they want. The first two paragraphs must state the most important information. So when you're designing, that's what you need to focus on. Up at the top, grab their attention, okay? Start subheads, paragraphs, and bullet points with information carrying words. Because again, you want to get there, the most important thing right away, and sometimes even bold it. And if it's something bolded, it's more likely to capture their eyes, their attention. And when you capture attention, hopefully it's something that's useful for them. Information carrying words that tells them, oh, this is worth reading on. And only then will they continue reading on. All right, and this kind of blends right in with the next content. So once you have design, then you have to start thinking about what's content do you want. So, and this is important, I think, a very overlooked, in spite of the fact that some people think, well, yeah, of course you have to have great content, right? Well, what separates your site from the 100 other sites, maybe even 1,000 other sites carrying the exact same ideas? And they're all out there, right? And people are creating this content, and you think you're unique? Well, you are a unique individual, and you have unique things to say, but there's also 1,000 other people with unique ideas that are saying something actually pretty similar. So what makes you different? Why should people pay attention to you? And you can do this in some ways by having great content. Okay? You can be the first one out there, and sometimes that is very powerful to get early attention. But if you want them to stay, if you want it to grow, you got to have great content. And so I've seen so many websites that people get this idea is, I got to put something up. I got to put something up. I got to get a website up. And then they put up something with very, very little content, nothing that's helpful, and people barely even spend any time on it. And it's really almost to the point where it's hardly even worth putting it up and spending any money on it. Granted, it's cheap to put stuff up, but you still don't want to look unprofessional. Right? So content is very, very important. To have good content. And what's even becoming more so today is not just that you put up good content, but that you continually keep adding new additional content. And what the search engines are starting to do is actually give precedence to blogs and news sites that offer new content on a regular basis. Okay, so good content regularly is being added will get you bumped up in the search engine rankings. That is some sweet stuff there. Now keep in mind, like we just saw, most people on the internet browse and skim. They're there to find what they want, that little chunk of knowledge that they're looking for, or that one product that they're looking to buy, and they don't want to waste time. So they're gonna use all kinds of skills to browse and skim and get through things quickly. If you want them to stay on your site and buy things on your site or click on links on your site, you have to capture their attention quickly. So yes, you need great content, but you also have to structure that content in such a way that they can find what they're looking for. What types of content should you produce? Well, there's a lot of different ways you can go about creating content, and it really kind of depends on what type of business you're trying to create. Now, if you're working with a local organization who's selling a product, obviously the content should focus around the products that they're selling. You could also create more of an informational content site. And I actually started doing this on my spare time. I've created a blog around personal development, okay, and what it takes to achieve success. So my content is going to be a lot more articles and book reviews and things like that, okay? And then I make money off of advertising and the affiliate marketing through the books, So content is very variable, but it's important to have good quality content. Now, if I was selling a product, what type of content would I want? I want to have a good description. I want to have good photos. But I want to make it as concise as possible to get as much information on one page in as concise of area as possible so that people can get what they want to make their decision. All right. Communication, another major area that I've struggled finding businesses that do this well, okay? And I've been to a lot of local business websites that do not have an address, a phone number, an email, or some other really easy way to get a hold of them. And it just really kind of blows my mind because it's very, very easy to do, and yet far too few businesses do this. You would think this would be a top priority. We want them to be able to get to our place, or we want them to be able to contact us now. but they don't do it for whatever reason. And some of them might cite that they want to have privacy, or they don't want a bunch of spam, or a bunch of people that aren't really interested in our product calling them. And yes, you're going to get some of that. Okay, but at what cost? Because let me tell you, I've been to enough of these local business websites that don't have this information, and if I can't find it, guess what? I have to go somewhere else. And that's just the reality of it. So you're losing valuable customers if you don't do this type of thing. Now, it's not saying you have to have each and every one of these, but a web presence must include some sort of communication strategy that will work for your users. So you have to think what it is for the user. And additionally, not just for users, but for the employees or the business owner, or however they want to set up the communication. Okay? Oftentimes, you don't want to have to hire a person just to handle communication, although sometimes your business is big enough to do that. But then you have to come up with some sort of strategy of, okay, if our users start communicating with us, how are we going to carry on that conversation? Is it primarily going to be based on email? Should we create message boards? And sometimes message boards work well because 2 or more users can start answering each other's questions, which means you don't need to necessarily hire an employee to do it. Now that's pretty sweet. I've even seen lately a growing use of chat. Little chat windows will pop up and say, do you have any questions? So-and-so here will help you answer your questions. Very, very convenient. Now they actually have to hire specific people to deal with these chat sessions. But hey, it's still a very useful feature. Are you using Twitter? Do you create a Facebook page? And if you do, what's your strategy for answering questions or comments on the Facebook wall? Because you need to have something set up, otherwise it won't get done. Right? Or you can even use like voice over IP, which is basically phone calls over the internet. All right, and I'm not really going to get into what is the best communication strategy because it's going to be highly dependent upon each business. But it's important to have some communication strategy with your web presence. So that way you have an idea of how you're going to deal with all these issues in the future. So here's my homework assignment. It's fun, easy, and hopefully you'll get inspired by some of these websites. So I found a nice list of websites that received some awards for good design. What I want you to do is take a look through these and start looking at the things that you like or things that you don't like. Look at some of these examples and try to figure out and think, why are they doing things this way? And do I like it? Okay. Who are their primary people they're trying to reach? And sometimes they might be trying to reach 2 different sets of people. Maybe there's customers and suppliers, or maybe there's current customers and potential customers. Okay. And so you have to kind of look at these multiple different people that they're trying to reach with their website, and are they doing it well? So this is just a kind of a quick breakdown of different sites, and we'll talk more about this in class. What do you think of these? And I'm looking for your opinions on these. All right, so take a look at them. Tell me what you like, what you don't like, what could be improved, and we'll get back and chat some more about it. All right. So what did we cover? All right, so we looked first at the revenue models, and I looked at 4 major revenue models: the product one time, the product ongoing, the service one time, and the service ongoing. And realize that on the web you can have any one of these 4 models, and it's possible to use multiple revenue models. And the key here is to figure out how to make your business, the business have a cash flow positive revenue model. The second big thing we talked about was web presence, and realizing it's very important for businesses to present themselves to the world in a very good way so that people take you seriously. And to do that, to build that trust, you need good design, good content, ease of communication, and a consistent moral behavior throughout. And if you can do those things, you're well on the way of being trusted to the point where people want to spend money with you. All right, that's all we got for today. Take care, everyone.